Just how important is knowing and understanding pace during an elk hunt? Have you ever thought about that? Well, y'all, I'm here to tell you this. One of our biggest takeaways from coaching our hunters this season was how difficult it is for folks when it comes to knowing what pace to use. Pace in their calling, how often, how much, when they do call. Pace in their movements through the woods, when to hurry up and slow down. Pace in reacting to a verbal response, a fresh track, a smell, or on a stalk. And even pace when it comes to energy output during the hunt. So y'all, tie those shoelaces. The coaches are in the house. And today's session is all about pace. That discussion, listener shout-outs, and questions from our ElkBros mailbox. So my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volume just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gillia. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If this is your first time with us, it's your fault. I hope you enjoy the show. And as always, for those blue collar elk hunters following our show and grinding out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I am not Gilbert Ornelas. Gilbert is not here to start the show. Luis, I'm going to make sure you get a chance to give him some heck for that.
Already did.
Yeah. So I am Joe Gillia. Gilbert will be joining us here. Oh, he'll mosey in a certain amount of time. He'll jump in. And you will know when he's present. I guarantee you. But joining us today, we've got Luis Gonzalez, Coach Chico Gallegos, Mr. Armando Martinez, my partner in crime, Leroy Chavez.
Definitely a crime.
And like I said, Gil will be joining us here. Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
Doing good,
buddy.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh man, it's way too calm. It's just way too... So
I'm just getting warmed up, Joe.
Yeah. So when Gil comes on, are we going to act like? I think what we ought to do is we ought to be able to do something like.
We can't hear him.
Gil, we can't hear you. Gil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Everybody will get that, right?
Okay, that sounds really good.
Yeah, so the crowd will be in on it too, man. So when you guys hear us saying, Gil, we don't hear you, you'll know exactly what's happening. We're going to probably let him pop out and pop back in before.
Oh, yeah, he's going to be so frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, I can already see his face.
Could be X-rated.
There might be some, rated R type words that would come out when...
Oh man, yeah, that guy, man. So you guys have still been busy, Luis. You and Gil, man, you guys have been tearing it up at the ranches, hogs, deer, right?
Yes, sir. It's been fun, and it ain't over yet. So next trip, Beto and I are gonna go to the ranch, and I've got a cold buck picked out for him, and we're gonna do an exchange. Then me and Manano are gonna go with him to his ranch in South Texas. To shoot another cold buck over there, and then I got the trip and with my daughters and my wife for Thanksgiving. We traditionally spent the Thanksgiving week at the ranch, and I've got deer picked out for both of them, for both my daughters. So pretty exciting.
So I want to get to Armando here in a second, but I just got to tell you, because when you talked about you and your wife hunting, this morning I recorded a podcast, where we do the elk camp conversations, right? So I recorded that with Dennis Vigas he's from the Gordo Tularosa area. Armando, he was actually the winner of one of your packs for the Random Acts of Kindness giveaway.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, so he got to use that pack, killed his first bull this year with the bow, right? But here's the cool part of the story. I'm talking to him, and he tells me that both him and his wife have a tag, and they're hunting together, and I get a picture of him over top of the bull. So I'm like, dude, you mean, didn't your wife get mad at you that you killed the bull? And I have this in my head because of the photo I see. As we start talking about the story, here is, I've never seen this. I've never heard it before. The bull that comes in, his wife had pulled back on a cow that had come in. When this bull comes in and then actually turns broadside in front of him, and he draws back on the bull 40 yards, lets the arrow fly, nails the bull runs off with the arrow. He's got a buddy in the back, and he makes a rookie move. He yells, "I got a bull!" He's jumping up and down, man. So he doesn't find the bull for another 250 yards because he probably like hitting it in the rear end with a prod, right? You know, bull just takes off. Well, so he's going, well, I'm not sure how well I hit it, you know, like that. And the guy that was with him was looking through his binos and said, no, both of you hit it. And he goes, what? He goes, yeah, your wife hit it too. And she goes, no, I shot. He goes, you shot? Yeah, I shot. She said, but I think I missed it. And he's like, both of you hit the elk, man.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he sends me the photo, and his is just real close to right above the back of the crease, mid-body. 4 inches from that is his wife's hole. She gets the pass-through all the way. He actually only goes to the flesh because I think it hits the leg on the other side. This bull got double
whammied.
Yeah, by a husband and wife team shooting. They didn't even know. They shot simultaneously, hit the bull simultaneously. So, I mean,
that's cool.
That's a real double lung right there.
Cool.
Yeah, double lung.
So the cool part about it too was, and kind of funny, is he's like shaking and nervous, and he's screaming and yelling, and his wife's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I don't know, I might have missed. And, oh, we both got it. Okay, that's good. And she's telling him, you need to scream and get rid of some of that energy. She's all calm, cool, collected, you know, and he's like falling to pieces. So, you know,
dude, those are the best people ever. He won that backpack from the wife won it from the Random Acts of Kindness from the bow rack out in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And so they mailed it to him. She went out, got to harvest her first animal, but he has been so supportive of us and paying it forward. Like right now we're raising socks for the month of October for the nonprofit that I work for Stocktober. Mm-hmm. And he already mailed a box over there to him. They sent me a picture. And when I went down to Ruidoso to help the fire victims, him and his son put money together, and they bought broadheads, and they helped me unload and get everybody set up, and they brought some goods. And so I'm so happy for him. Like those two people, it couldn't have been two better people to have that story happen to them.
You know, I had to bring up when I was recording about, because I saw, he sent me a video, and I think it was in 21, his son shooting his first deer. It was really, really special because here's a kid, a young man that has killed his first deer, going up to it the first time. And, you know, a lot of times you see, and there's nothing wrong with it, man. Everybody celebrates in their own way, right? Most people just jump up and grab the horns and like, yeah, I did it, you know, like that. And he stands up beside that animal, takes his hat off and looks up to the sky and thanks God for what just took place, and thanked for the animal and just honored the animal, honored the hunt. And to see a young man, I think at that time he was 13, I think, you know, at that time. And to see that, you know that dad's doing something right. Mom and dad are doing something right, yes. You know, so I thought that was really, really special, and I had to commend him on that, you know, when you get your kids involved like that. So pretty dang cool. And you've been busy too, Mondo, right?
Oh, it's been bananas. You know, I'm always busy, man. So yeah, it's been nonstop from elk to antelope to elk again. And now I think I have a deer hunt or two, and then I think 3 more elk hunts. So it's been a lot, but it's good.
Yeah, living the life.
Yeah, putting them in the dirt. So that's what it's all about. Making memories, man. Making memories.
Mm-hmm. Making memories. Right.
Quick update on Beto. He just responded, "Oh, I won't miss, bro." Just be late, he says.
Yeah, we'll be waiting. We're waiting for you, bro.
Yeah.
When you
We
listen
got
to
some
this,
for you.
we're
Yeah.
waiting for you, bro. We're going to be
Pins and
there.
needles. We're on pins and needles over here.
What about
I'm
you,
gonna tell
Chico?
him-
You been out in the
I'm gonna
woods,
tell
man?
him the intro was done by Joe, so I mean it's already like you're not there.
Gilbert, who?
I've been out. I actually was able to get a deer tag up here in 45. One of my buddy's places. My freezer's getting low, so I was able to get a tag actually for this weekend. I'll be heading up with the rifle, and then I'm scouting. My son, he's got a muzzleloader cow tag for 45. I think we're gonna get his new wife and my two granddaughters involved, so that's gonna be really cool. Get to show them the area and just go out and hunt. You know, we're gonna camp. It's gonna be cold. It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be. They call me Pompey. That's grandpa. That's my grandpa name, Pompey. So Pompey's gonna be in charge of keeping my granddaughters warm and make sure they're fed, and I also in charge of finding the elk. So that'll be in mid-November. But yeah, I've been getting out every chance I get. We've had some rain here close by, but things look good. The animals are healthy, which is really good. We've had that burn. Right after the burn, I passed up a big bull. I think I sent you video, Coach. I passed up a really big, like a 350, 360 bull, just because it was just too close to the burn and too close to, I just couldn't do it. I didn't even draw. I just let him walk by. But the animals look healthy. The habitat is coming back.
Good.
A lot of oak coming through. So yeah, I'm hoping I get a buck in the freezer this weekend, and then my boy will get a cow hopefully mid-November.
Well, we've had guys in the woods still. We've got hunts still going on, and I don't know if you guys saw, but Jeremy Gilbertson went into the unit 53, and man, he shot himself a bull last date. This guy, let me tell you what, Jeremy, man, he earned this booger, man. Jeremy, just like, I'll give you an example. Let's see, I think he started and went up to the top of Italiano Trail over to where Cow Lake is. Check that, it came back. He went over into Van Diest Park over there and ended up coming back. He went up on top of Fourth, and not on Fourth itself, but further over. He went all the way up on top, came back down. I mean, this guy put in, I think he probably put in 50 or 60 miles, but they were hard miles. I mean, he was telling me, yeah, I just went and came back from this area. I'm like, dude, man, he's just blowing because of his condition. He's just blowing through places, right? But on the last day, I was like, man, if I were you, I'd go try this spot. And he did. And, he tells me, he sends a thing and he said, bull down, yeah, I got it done. So he was really, really excited. He shot it that morning and didn't finish getting the animal packed out till probably 9:30 at night by the time he got it out. So,
wow.
Yeah. So he put so congratulations to Jeremy, man. The coaches, all you guys are tearing it up, having a good time. So that's awesome, man. So until we get Gil back in here, man, we're going to go ahead and move forward. And now the ElkBros mailbox, here's what we're going to do, y'all. We have 2 questions today. We have one from Bronson Werley out of Colorado, and the other from Brian McDade. But those questions fit exactly into what our main topic is tonight. So I'm actually going to pull them in during the topics when we're discussing it. Okay?
Newsflash, Joe, I'm back.
That work? Cool. I see Gilbert here, but I don't hear him. I can't. Gil, you there?
He's not on yet.
This is not counting. I mean, he lost his streak again.
I saw a picture pop up. That
don't count.
I see a little bitty elk on the screen, but I don't see I don't.
Gil, if you can hear me, bud, you might want to go out and come back in because we're not getting no audio.
Raise your hand.
Okay, he's out already.
That didn't even sound like him.
I'll do it again, and I'll ask him to raise his hand.
Tell him to keep moving till he gets a signal.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
stand outside, get a signal.
You know, as much guff as that dude gives all of us, man, this is just perfect, man. And I know, Gil, you're going to listen to this later, man. We love you, brother. We love you, man. Okay, he's trying to come back in right now. Let's see what happens. So, you guys, you know what time it is. It's time for our ElkBros shout out.
Shout
Shout out.
If you're new to the show, this is a shout out to all of our followers in a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week. Chav, I'm going to let you rock and roll. Whoa, wait a second. I see Gil again. Hey,
Can you
Gil,
hear?
are you there, Gil?
Hello?
Gil?
Yes.
Man, I think he's probably got issues with his audio. Gilbert, if you can hear us, raise your hand.
Hello, Gil?
It's a screenshot.
Hey, Gil, bro, we've been hearing you the whole time, dude. So,
Hey, I got something for all of y'all. Y'all are all number one in my life.
we're glad to have you, man. We're glad you're not having technical difficulties, man.
I'm having technical difficulties. It's called ElkBros.
Now we heard that loud and clear.
You can't hear another, but you can hear that.
I just want you to know, man, I was against this. It was Armando's idea.
And I fully supported it.
I know that ain't true.
Hey. Plead the fifth, bro.
All right, dude, I know you don't have your computer in front of you, so I'm going to take your stuff too, Gil. And Chav, why don't you start us out with the top listening city?
This top listening city is home to the Screaming Eagles, the 101st Airborne Division of Fort Campbell. The annual Riverfest, a popular event with live music, art, and food vendors, is held along the scenic river walk along the Cumberland River. Country music legend Roy Acuff, known as the King of Country Music, lived here. The city was named after a Revolutionary War hero and brother to William Clark of the Lewis and Clark Expedition, and this town is Clarksville, Tennessee.
Clarksville, Tennessee. Yeah. Gil, have you been there, Gil?
I have. Yes, sir. It's right outside of Nashville.
Every time.
Feels a cool little town, man.
What were you doing in Clarksville, Tennessee, man?
Going to Nashville?
Oh, okay. So it was a pass through and you ate there or you slept there or?
No,
was
just passing through, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't count being there unless you stop there, man.
So I got to stop. Well, I might have used the restroom at one of them 7-Elevens or something.
My only problem is, man, they said Roy Acuff, the king of country. Have you guys heard of Roy?
Yeah.
I know who Roy Acuff is. He ain't the king of country music, though.
He's an old timer.
Well, Clarksville, Tennessee thinks he is, bro.
Maybe because he's from Clarksville.
Yeah. Well, as far as they're our top listening city, so as far as we're concerned, Roy Acuff, the man, is the king of country music.
From Clarksville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chico, you're up, man.
Oh, baby.
What's up, Gil?
How you doing, babe? I'm so happy, dude. You made my whole night with that text you sent us, brother. I've been praying every night for that, and God is good, brother.
I know you have. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, located near the Canadian Rocky Mountains, this city is...
Hey, Chico, you don't have to yell, bro. You don't have to yell. I'm just telling you, man. Okay.
You're not in court.
Located near the Canadian Rocky Mountains. The city is 15 minutes away from Jasper National Park, Canada's most famous natural reserve. The city is home to the world's longest freshwater boardwalk, the Beaver Boardwalk, and hosts the annual Wild Mountain Music Festival. The city is an excellent spot for viewing the Northern Lights because of the town's dark skies. Its place is Hinton, Alberta, Canada.
Hinton, Alberta, Canada. Our folks to the north, man.
And that's my radio voice, ladies and gentlemen.
So New Mexico has been a great place lately to see the Northern Lights. And you guys see them?
I've missed them, man. Every single time I missed it. I don't watch TV or do nothing like that, so I missed those memos that come out tell you to look up.
Have you all seen the comet?
Yeah, well, I saw your picture. So once I saw the photo, I was like, I don't need to go outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the coolest things we saw being in Canada 2 years ago now. But it was one of the coolest things having
Northern Lights.
Yeah, man, and night bugling with the Northern Lights. It was almost like you're on a different planet. It was cool.
Yeah. What's crazy, one thing I didn't realize, I thought the Northern Lights at night just were all the time, but it's not like that. It's like there's nothing in the sky, and then all of a sudden they just show up. And ours were like green when we were in Canada. It was like a green color, but the ones in New Mexico have been like a reddish and
red orange. Yeah.
Yeah, and orange. It's been pretty awesome to have them down this low, man.
This city is the oldest charter town in New Hampshire, and it is named after a similarly named town in Massachusetts, where the early settlers came from. This area, especially Mount Wataic and the Wallachia Trail, is a popular destination for hikers. The town, which is home to several apple orchards, making it a popular spot for apple picking. This is New Ipswich, New Hampshire.
New Ipswich.
Hey, let me tell you something, Mr. Joe Giglia. I listen. I want everybody to listen to this laugh because Joe knows that he found the hardest ones and hooked me up as the rookie here with some pretty tough names to pronounce. So I guarantee you 1,000,000,000% that he was laughing that laugh while he was typing this shit up. I'll have you know, Joseph, the last 20 minutes I've been listening to how people pronounce these names to make sure I didn't butcher them. So I did my homework.
Don't blame it all on Joe. You know, Chav over there just silently looking at this whole thing. I mean, he's just like, yeah, he just plays innocent, but I mean, he's got some say in where things go. Yeah.
Some say
there's, when you talk about the beach, he purposely selects that word and gives it to me because they know I'm going to be mispronouncing it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All I can say, Armando, is as you were going through it, I was like, God dang, he's acting like he knows what that stuff is. I was like,
34 minutes ago, I wouldn't have known. 30 minutes ago, I knew what it was. I did my homework.
I was like, either he is just going through it, like acting like he knows what he's talking about, or he's blowing it and not showing it. So
fake it till you make it.
I had to, the Wallachaic was tough, and the Wallachia, I said, that's not weird that he put that right next to each other. And Ipswich, New Ipswich.
Yeah.
So shout out to New Hampshire. Yeah.
A story about Chav and his sneakiness, right?
the ninja.
Yeah. He's always look at him. Yeah, he's so quiet and he does like this, who me? So in college, during that time, we didn't have the internet and stuff like that. But what was it you were accessing, Chav?
The teletype that showed the news as it came.
Yeah, the little news teletypers.
Yeah, little thing. Yeah.
So he had access to the teletype that would put the scores out for the games before they were televised on there. Oh. So what do you think Chav was doing with that information? Yeah, I think there's some people that you lost some bets to back in the day, man. That should be working for you, Chavez.
As your attorney, Chav, you don't have to answer that question.
Okay, yeah, I got my lawyer.
I recommend that you do not answer that question.
Last but not least, this city is known as and watch how well I do this, Armando. I want you to see how well I do.
Okay,
4th of July City, and has hosted the annual Independence Day celebration since 1868. This small town is 25 miles west of Lincoln, Nebraska, allowing residents to enjoy small town life with access to opportunities of a larger city. When visiting, you guys are going to have to go check out the band shell. It is a popular venue for outdoor concerts in the Plum Creek Park in Seward, Nebraska. That's how it's done, Armando.
That was pretty damn well done.
All easy words.
I would imagine your brother-in-law treated you well with writing that script.
I got Nebraska right. I got Lincoln right.
Even got Plum right.
It was well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you, man. All right, everybody, we've had some fun. Now it's time to do something that's going to help you guys out there, man. Thanks for joining along with us. We don't get to, shoot, I haven't seen Luis in a while, haven't got to see Armand, haven't seen Chico since camp, man. And Chav actually has been hiding from me lately, too. So it just, we get a chance to see each other, and it's always good to see you fellas, man. So. Main content. If I was just to tell people that tonight's show is about pace during elk hunting, I think I could say that, and I think a lot of people would get all kinds of different thoughts, and most likely the thought they have is like pace, maybe when I'm going through the woods or something like that. Well, unless you have someone to actually see it, to hear and even feel the paces they use during all aspects of the hunt. We're not just talking about covering country. That's not what the only thing that we're talking about in pace. It's just presumed, or it becomes a trial and error thing for most people in all of these different aspects. What type of different aspects? Well, these were things that were really, really evident during our coached hunts. I mean, everybody that I went out with, I noticed these types of things. And it was because if they don't have somebody to show them or to teach them, if they hear about, okay, you got to do this call, or you got to close this gap, or you got to do this, they have to assume what that's going to be like. So unless they have somebody to show them that, it's real difficult for them. And those areas are that we're going to talk about: pace and calling, like how often and how much. When they do call, I had guys that they're not sure, like once they start walking, well, should I call every 10 yards? Should I call every 100 yards? Should I, you know what I mean? Like that. And then there's the pace when they're calling. So it's like, okay, I'm going to cow call. So they're just all there, yeah, 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 yeah. Do I just hammer at it? Do I give one? You know, what is that pace like? So we're going to talk about that. The other one we're going to talk about is, and this is the one that really stood out to me, and that was pace in folks' movement in the woods, when to hurry up and slow down. And we'll go into that more detail. Then pace in reacting to a verbal response, a fresh track, a smell, or on a stalk. You know, what kind of pace do they use when they do that? And I'm just throwing this out. I'm not going to hit it really hard because I want those juices flowing when we get there. And this is one that Chico brought up during the hunt. He didn't think I was listening, but I was, right? And even pace when it comes to energy output during the hunt. It can be different from a 2-day hunt to a 5-day hunt to a 8-day hunt, you know, and we'll talk more about that. Out of those areas of pace, which one of those stands out to you the most and really like jumped out at you as like, yeah, I definitely can see that?
I'll start. I think the first one that I thought is kind of a combined thing. One thing that I run into with a lot of hunters, especially ones that come in from out of state, is going to be pace of their movement.
Right.
And mostly I believe that's because I'm kind of setting the pace as far as calling and approaching the elk and doing the setup. So when I think of their pace, it's typically because they're winded, you know, like the elevation is no joke. So for those of you who are going to come and hunt with, you know, ElkBros Adventures and do some coach hunts, be aware that if you can get here 2 days early and kind of acclimate to the elevation, you know, just walk around or something, it'll pay dividends, because the pace that you're going to be able to go after these animals will be a lot different. That's a huge thing. So for me, that number one dictates the pace, because if I tell you we need to get to this tree line, or I need you to get to that tree, if you get to that tree and you can't hold your breath, or you can't hold your bow still, you know, like I need your brain to still work after you have a game plan in order and the animal's coming in and all hell breaks loose, and you know what's going to happen because you've watched it and you've thought about it, but your heart rate's going to be up because you're going to be in a situation you hadn't been in. That number one is going to wreck you. Your lungs are going to be on fire because your body and your lungs are just not used to the elevation. and whatever the approach is that you had to take to get there. So those two paces, like, those are the ones that first stick out to me, just because, bringing hunters out to hunt in New Mexico, that's something that I see that happens a lot. It's easy for me as a guide to get from spot A to spot B, or tell you to get from spot B to set up at spot C. And if within that pace that you take to get there, you can't keep your brain clear and make wise decisions, and know that you're setting up in front of something instead of behind it, know your angles, take all the information that you studied all summer. Like, if all of these things aren't clicking, your pace is probably a little too fast, because if you get there and you don't know what to do, it doesn't matter that you're there. I would rather you be 10 yards behind where you should have been and able to think, because you can go to plan B, C, and D at that point. But I don't want you in front of an elk if you can't think. So if you can't limit your pace to make sure you're thinking correctly, your pace was too fast. So that's what comes to mind for me.
That it's real interesting, Bud, that you went that route, because I think about that all the time. But when that's with you out front, and you're actually kind of dictating getting to the animal, right? And you're dictating how you're moving through the woods. You're dictating, like, when you're in a certain type of area, how quick you're going to move, where you're going to slow down. And it's funny that as guiding people like that, it's almost like riding in a car. They really don't pay attention. That's like if I was to go through the city and I get to the mall, and then I tell somebody, okay, from the house, now you drive to the mall. They're like,
exactly.
Because they weren't paying attention, right? So where I saw, and where I'm really want to talk about this, because most of these guys listening to this aren't going to be with a guide. And where I saw the issue this year wasn't when I'm in front. Where I saw the issue is when the hunter had to be in front. The hunter
100.
had to determine where we were going and how we were getting there.
That's right.
That now they went from the passenger to the driver, and they weren't sure how to drive the car, right? They weren't sure. Like, I'll give you a great example. So, and when we're talking about our people during our hunts, I'm not going to mention any names. I don't want to do that, but I really want to talk about some of these things that I saw. And, for example, we got out of a buggy one time with the guys, and we get out, we put everything on, and we start, and we're there, right? We're in the woods, and we start to go, and we're on a trail, and they are just hammering up the trail. I mean, hammering. Now, number one, I'm like, on my pace, I can go hard when I need to go hard, right? One thing that I don't like to do is I don't want to just get out and hit a hard pace and start sweating, right? I don't want to, just start sweating it up. But these guys start hitting, they're just hammering the trail. And I'm like, whoa, I'm like, where are you going? And,
I feel that way every time I'm out with you, Joe. whoa. I gotta warm my legs up. I'm running to the top of the hill.
Hey, Gilbert has joined us, everybody. Gilbert's joined. Hey, Gilbert, welcome. We're glad you got over that technical difficulty from before.
Thank you, brothers. Yeah. I'm gonna get you with the number one, bro. This is a family show, Joe. Come on.
So when they start going, I was like, well, where are you going? And they're like, in their mind, they're like, well, we just left the buggy, so we got to go someplace where the elk are. And the point that I made them right now is, you're in the woods, you're where the elk are, right? And I think that is the thing that I want to talk about is, and I'm going to throw this out there, is that a lot of these people that get out there don't know, and it wasn't just them. I got there with another partner that was out there, and I mean, it was the same thing, just whoo, and I was like, well, where are you going, man? And they get this destination in their head of where elk should be, and they just blow through, right? Now, if you hunt an area for a long time, you've been in there a lot, and you kind of have an idea of what's happening a lot of times. Sometimes some of that is legitimate, but I still think a lot of times we predestine a thought in our head of where we think elk are, and we actually go through elk. So I noticed with the same thing that this guy was just moving, man. So how do you guys feel about that, or what did you notice either with yourself? Was that something that was a trial for you? What was the change, or did you notice that with people that you work with?
Yeah, so I'll lead off with that, Joe. I mean, we had some really incredible guys in camp that, had been in camp a few days before we ever got there, right?
Oh yeah,
So
they've been
they
hunting
were,
4 days.
yeah, they've been there 4 days. A lot of them were pretty whipped and worn out, and but yet when they moved through the woods, it was just them taking in the scenery of being there, but not really understanding what they were looking for, right? I went up a trail maybe. I mean, we shut the buggy off and literally were hunting within feet of the buggy. You know what I mean? We start up a little trail and we're easing up that trail, and I see fresh sign in 15 different places, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this, Well, they're oblivious. They're just moving.
Right.
And I'm like, hey man, stop. I said, very quietly, I said, hey, stop. Let's talk about something here. I said, look around you. What makes this a really good place for us to hunt? Can you tell me anything? And they're like, oh, they look around like up in the trees, bro. They're like elk are up there or something. I don't know. And they're like, well, this is really pretty. It's a real pretty place. I'm like, bro, look what you're standing in. And it's fresh elk dung they're standing in. And I'm like, look at 5 feet away from you, this 7-foot pine that's ripped to shreds, brand new. I mean, you can smell the pine that's coming off of it. He'd been there that morning or that afternoon. And then look ahead about another 30 yards and another 30 yards. It's just rub after rub and, scrape after scrape. It's like, and those aren't mule deer, man. A mule deer ain't 9 foot tall. They can't push a 7-foot pine tree over and rip it to shreds, And I let them in on all that. And they were like a calf looking at a new gate, like, oh, wow. I had no idea. And I'm like, bro, we're here hunting, trying to find elk. This is telling you this is where they are. This is a sign from the gods of hunting, man. This is where we need to be. We need to. And what does that tell you? We need to slow down in here and put our eyes to work a whole lot more than our feet, right? Because we're in the proximity of where the critters are, And when they understood that, man, then you watched them come off of that buggy and go to a trailhead and ran. They really scan, and that slows things down for them. And I think as hunters, even as guiding or as hunters, we blow through areas too, right? We put our foot down and our head down and we rock and roll till we blow something up. Right. And then we're like, oh man, if we'd have just took the time and slowed down and smelled the roses a little bit and checked in those openings with our binoculars or whatever, and that happened for us. They got to see firsthand what slowing down did. We actually found elk before we ever got to them with our binoculars, in the woods, so it was, I'll tell you, I had some extreme encounters, and it was really cool to see our players or our coached guys come from me having to tell them about all the sign that we're seeing to them guys alerting me on things, towards the end of the hunt. So
Right.
It was phenomenal, man. But yeah, definitely a different pace from us to them, and then them from the first part to the end of the hunt. I thought you could see the growth in them in just five short days.
Well, for me, it's, one of the things that I noticed, especially with Onyx, and I'm kind of new to that. I'm really enjoying learning, and scouting and kind of mapping things out. Well, a lot of times they got they e-scouted, they got these places mapped out. And for them, it's like, I got to get to that waypoint.
There you go. Yeah. Right.
And in between where you start walking and that waypoint, it's just like blinders are on.
Yeah.
Gotta go. So for me, you kind of bring in a little bit of old school. There's two things that I was taught. One is you got to match your ability to walk quietly. So how, some people can, my older brother can walk fast and quiet, and he can look all around. And I mean, he does it all at the same time, but that's 50 years of experience. So you got to gauge your ability to walk quietly. And for me, the next measure is 80 yards. I don't care if it's thick timber or what. You got to be able to see 80 yards. You got to be looking 80 yards into that timber to see what's going on. And if you can coordinate those two things, walking quietly, and to me, slow is fast, right? So slow is fast, and you got to be able to scan 80 yards. If you're able to coordinate those two things, then that dictates your pace, right? And for some people, it's a little faster. Some people, it's a little slower. But you're gonna eliminate a lot of mistakes, because that's, I've made a lot of mistakes walking too fast, not looking up. But I would, for the guys that are coming in, like Armando said, the guys that are coming in from out of state, is practice. When you're not hunting, go out and practice and see how quietly you can walk, and then start walking a little faster. And then as you're able to walk quietly, make sure that you're looking up. And for me, like I said, it's 80 yards. That's just a measure that I've adopted over time, is, because if you're practicing, and I do this a lot, I still practice. Because if you pick out an object, say it's a rock, a stump, a tree, and you move 3 steps,
different angle,
that whole thing changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can if you can spot something 40 yards, this is what I would practice. Look at something 40 yards and keep your eye on it, and then start walking towards it and see how the whole thing changes as you're walking.
Sure does.
Right? That's, and that's the difference between spotting an ear, spotting a tine of an antler from a bedded bull. And that's also, you're at the same time you're checking your wind.
Yep.
That's the thing that goofs things the most. An elk can hear you. That's not a problem.
No.
No, you can, the elk are used to hearing, things in the woods. Even after they see you, once they smell you, that's it, you're done. So I think your pace really is dependent upon how well you can travel in the woods quietly and still be able to look ahead. And that just takes practice.
Okay.
I'll give a shout out to the guys, the guys that I coached this year. They were prepared and they were in shape, and and I'm a baller, man. I can go and go and go and go for days. And, but you gotta be able to make sure that you know what your limitations are. But I did know
what their limitations are.
A little loud, a little fast, and looking down a lot.
Yeah.
So, get up. And the cool thing about the way the brain works is, if you look ahead of yourself for the next 5 seconds, the brain records what it saw.
Yeah.
So you can look up, and your brain is going to tell you, where the twigs are, and you don't want to be stepping on those pine cones, because those will screw you up. But to me, your own pace is dictated by your ability to do those things, and it's going to improve over time. So,
sure.
To me, slow is fast until you get your feet under you.
Right.
Slow is fast. That's my advice.
Yeah, and I talked about the 30-30-30 rule, where we move 30 yards, wait 30 seconds, and scan up to 30 seconds. And then another 30 seconds, we scan again, check our wind, then we move 30 yards, right? So you've got a minute or so between when we're scanning and moving, and we might even increase that or increase that if we got wind where it's hiding, masking us moving and stuff like that. We can move a little more swiftly because it's masking some of that sound. But for me, it's the slower when you start out your elk hunting career, the slower you can go. I think the more you retain, the more of the country you absorb, the smells, everything else, so I just wanted them to slow down and see things in front of them and look for elk, look for sign, look for elk. And for me, that 30-30-30 rule is something that helps, and it helps you from moving too fast through an area, especially when you got tons of real fresh sign.
For me, I try to, and I tell people this with every aspect of like hunting elk, is I try to take some of the same habits that the elk do. So elk basically have stop and scan spots. Anytime they get someplace where they can look and they can check an area and they can see if it's clear, if it's safe. And in our instance, we're doing just the opposite. We're looking for them to see if we have prey in the area. So the tighter it is, the slower I have to move through it because I don't know what's right there. And now this is when we are moving through forests. It's not. So I see guys, they do just the opposite. Like they're going really hard, like Chico said, to get to a destination. But then when they hear an animal, when they should be going fast, they get super slow, right? So they're going fast to get through country when they haven't seen, heard, or smell anything. And then as soon as they do hear something, they get really, really slow and they lock in a lot of times. So they almost do the opposite. And for me, it's almost like a feel, like we had Doc in there that said, he was in an area and it was VFE, very friggin' elky, right? You just could, you could just feel that. So like when I'm moving through the woods, there's two different types of paces. One, if I am calling while I'm moving, because if I'm calling while I'm moving, then I've got animals that are going to be coming into me, right? So sometimes I go, and I think Manano does a great job at this, man. I think Manano sometimes just says, bro, let's just stop and listen for a few minutes. Right, Luis? Right? That's one of his, he's real good at that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was gonna comment on. Like that's kind of been our style of hunting the last couple of years. I mean, obviously we hunted with Joe for various years, and then as we started hunting by ourselves, we kind of came up with our own little way of, our own pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we go consistent, we cover a lot of ground, we don't go super fast. And then, Manano's got much better hearing than me in the woods. And to me, stopping every once in a while just to kind of listen and to make sure that we're not missing anything out, it just gives you, it's amazing how much background noise your own walking generates and how much you can miss nearby that because you're walking, even if you're trying to walk slow. So yes, that has been paid a lot of dividends for us just to kind of sit, wait a little bit and listen, kind of like what Gilbert's saying about the 30-30 method. We actually do that a lot. And and I do it for stalking pigs, and also for hunting elk. Now that's the pace as far as us walking through the woods. Like I like what Chico said, that imprint when you look down and you memorize this, the next 5 steps or so, and then you look up and then you slowly walking. Sometimes the environment doesn't allow you to be silent, even if you go slow. So the amount of times you stop to listen probably increases when it gets thicker. And then as far as pacing yourself, like Armando was talking about, pacing yourself with energy, I don't know if this is just me, but I'm going to ask you guys if you guys feel the same way. Sometimes I feel like when I start walking, like when I start my hunt, I feel like I'm going really slow. I'm listening, say I go 2 hours in, but then in my mind, I feel like I've only gone maybe like a mile, 2 miles. And then when it's time to go back, I'm trying to go fast because, it's getting dark or whatever. I feel like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It feels like way longer on the way back than it does on the way there. So I don't know if that happens to everybody, but that happens to me a lot. So I normally try to kind of be mindful too of how far out I'm going if I'm thinking of going back. So plan your journey to where you're not stranded out there unnecessarily in the dark, if that's not part of your plan. And then, like Chico said, yes, definitely Onyx helps a lot in that front. So, yeah, I can't agree more with what you guys are saying, and definitely relate to all of it.
So I think my pace changes when I'm calling than when I'm not
100%.
calling, right?
Yeah.
And it also changes on like the productivity of the area, the feel. Like if I'm on an elk trail, because I don't always worry about my noise so much. That's why I'm calling. I'm trying to actually create that scenario of animals moving through. But if I'm on a fresh track, like, and I'll do that a lot of times, I'll catch on a fresh track on a trail, and my pace is totally, it's like a hurry up, slow down type thing. Whenever I get to new stop and scan areas, and I'm trying to be as quiet as I can at the speed that I'm going so that I can be quiet, because now I'm trying to actually move into those animals without them knowing that I'm going there, without me announcing myself. Unless it gets in a situation where I think they're already bedded and I got to move to a spot and maybe then set up and start doing something where I'm doing some noise. So I'm just trying to tell you that pace changes according to that time of day. It changes according to what kind of sign you're seeing. It changes according to what the current strategy is at the time. It changes according to what kind of response that you're getting out there. So if I'm just moving through the woods, and that's one thing the guys started, they were like, sometimes it's like hurry up and slow down with you, right? And if I'm going through and I do a stop and scan and I'm just like the elk, I can see 100 yards through pines on each side. Well, once I have it cleared, I'm just like a SWAT team, clear, and I'm moving, right?
Another 100 yards.
Yeah, to that stop and scan. But as it gets tighter, where I don't have that vision as much, or I'm coming to either a change in terrain where I've got to look over or something like that, I just don't pop up on top of hills, man. It's always a little bit where I can see, just like the animals do. When I just get so that my vision changes, I want to be able to check that, and I want to check the clear. So that's what I'm telling. For me, pace changes according to the terrain, vegetation, activity, sign, all according to that.
And the situation.
Situation, right? So Chav, for you, because you've been the type of person that really didn't do a whole lot of calling, but you were always in elk all the time, man, without doing what I do. So you had to have really done some things to determine your pace to be able to find them.
So a lot of it kind of like went on is don't go real fast and do a lot of scanning, a lot of listening, and scan the area. Like you said, if you can see 100 yards in front of you in all directions, move up a little bit, but not necessarily move up 100 yards. Move up 50, and then your new view of 100 yards changes.
Yeah,
and basically that's about it. I know when I first started hunting, I just followed you. So if you said, okay, let's turn around and go back, I go, okay. Turn around and go back because I don't know where I came from.
You go in front. Yeah, you drive.
And I think that happens to a lot of hunters that go out with a friend. They're used to following and not really paying attention.
Right?
Yeah. So you ask them, have you ever hunted elk and how experienced are you? They'll say, well, I've hunted for 5 years. But if you're following like I was, it's really zero experience because you weren't paying attention to stuff. If anything, if you were any help, it was the fact that you had two more, another pair of eyes.
Yeah.
where sometimes you didn't see something, but I did. And, I'd have to throw a pine cone at you to stop.
Yeah, so he says that, right? This dude says that. Well, so we're hunting, and he's like, "Oh, look!" And he picks up an arrowhead, right? And I'm like, "Who's looking for elk and who's looking for arrowheads?" Right?
I found a lot of arrowheads.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the boys were hunting with Joe, my teacher and mentor was Chav, and while he doesn't call a whole lot, he knows exactly what call to make, right? And he knows exactly how to say it, right? So he would say, "Hey, do this cow call," and I would, do what Joe taught me to do and what Chav taught me to do, and use the pace that he taught me to use, the cadence, the pace, and then we would, really not understanding the language at all, just mimic what the elk did back, right? And that worked a ton for us, and before you know it, we're in the middle of them, and we got bulls coming in, we're calling them in, we're having conversations with them. So I couldn't ask for a better mentor to really slow you down in the country. I don't go fast anyway, so y'all know that. I got 4-wheel drive, and that's about it, and it's low. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go slow anyway. But have a real knack, a good skill set with being able to call elk, and then really understand how to look at e-scouting in a way to understand their travel habits and where they're gonna want to go and come and be in transition, which is the areas I like to hunt, is transitional areas, right? Especially when they're on their feet, starting to bugle and looking for cows, right? So those are the things that Chav really taught me, was area specific things, and then pace when it came to slowing down and really dissecting the area and understanding where the elk were going to be. I think he's a master at that.
Yeah, in a way, he kind of gave you the confidence to call.
Yes.
Because I wasn't going to, but I letting you know how to call.
Yes.
I think probably would have improved your calling even quicker if I would have told you why.
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of telling you, do it now.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Yeah.
But you got that confidence on your own, so that's a good coaching point for the coaches when you're out in the field with the beginners.
So he just said beyond 2 sentences. I just want everybody to be aware of that right now.
Take your notepads out, boys.
Yeah. EF hunting talks. You better listen.
Yeah.
Something to take notes. I just think the more that I'm listening to this and the advice that you're giving there, Chav, and the experience that Gil is talking about is, knowing when to call and how to call is extremely important.
Yes.
Now you guys have an opportunity to go through the class, right? Joe is willing to teach you how to do this. There's a platform for you to learn this. So, Luis hunts slow. I really, honestly, I think I hunt pretty slow until it's go time. I try to go slow. But if you're coming from out of state, or you don't think that you can go to the next drainage or the next ridge because of your physical ability, learn how to call, because if they meet you halfway, you're covering half of the distance.
That's right, buddy.
If you guys can think of it that way, log on, get the membership, start practicing calling right now. You don't have to walk 5 miles. You could walk 2.5 miles. There's a big difference in between the two, 3, 4 times a day. Like, those miles add up. And if you can communicate with these animals and bring them halfway, your hunt is halfway easier just by putting in the effort now and learning how to do those things now.
So the caveat to that, bro, is this, and totally agree with you. I mean, that's why the one thing is, everybody that came to camp this year, I mean, they were legit. I mean,
awesome.
They're calling.
Awesome.
And if they were struggling, it didn't take much at all to get them to where they were, right? I mean, they had put the time in. But here's the caveat to it is, whenever we teach somebody to call, we're teaching them how to make a sound. We're even talking about what that sound possibly means, right? When you would use that sound. But the one thing that's really hard that doesn't happen is real-time calling in situations, circumstance, terrain, so they The part that they lack is where and when, right? Because that's not something that we can actually, until we get them boots on the ground. And that's why our first day of coaching is us showing them our rhythm and pace and telling them why, when, and everything like that, so that they can see it and feel it and see the time spans, see visually what type of areas we're in when we're calling and why we're calling there, right?
Yeah.
Because that's...
My guys even recorded me, Joe.
Oh,
they recorded me so they could see that pace and listen to that.
But that's kind of like trying to take a picture of the sunrise, bro. I mean,
I think it was more for them to see the cadence and, and what we did, how we started a sequence out, those things.
What did they do? So that's critical. And now that we're in pace and calling, the cadence, what type of sounds you're putting together, the space between them, how often you're doing them, right, is a pace, right? Mm-hmm. So in the sets of calling, they have their pace. Like, for example, I'm going, yeah, right? That is a certain type of cadence or pace on that. And then there's a pace between, well, when do I do that again? Or if I give one cow call, when do I give the next cow call? And what's that going to sound like? Am I going to walk through the woods going, yeah,
melodic, yeah.
Right? And there's people that
mundane,
they don't, and it's just constant, right? They don't know not to do that, right? And there's sometimes when you do where it sounds friggin' obnoxious, right?
Yeah, pleading, yep.
Yeah, but that's what's needed in that situation at that time. Yeah. So you've got the pace in whatever the call you're doing, whatever multiple singles or anything like that. But then there's the pace of, as you're moving through the woods, when you call, right? Where you call from,
right?
How often you call, how many times you call, right? So that, I think, is the toughest part of the pace for them. And what I tried to get my hunters to see, well, let me just do this. Luis, you were actually one of the guys that really one of my first students with me, right? When we started doing this stuff. And believe it or not, I can still remember all of this. I can remember the first time I told you to start calling and seeing the look in your eye like, me? You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like
you want me to do what?
He was just, it was like he was getting ready to step on stage and do a concert with a crowd. I mean, you could just literally see that, right?
Yep. And that's how I felt too.
And I promise you, all of our guys felt that way as well, calling in front of us. After we did our first couple days with them, they were like, there ain't no way I can do that, man. That's like, it's like a symphony versus, a dude learning how to play a dadgum piano the first time. He can't even play chopsticks, you know what I mean? So they feel that way. So they're a little apprehensive to want to call in front of you for fear of sounding bad or not getting it right. I'm like, dude, let it out. This is where we get better. This is where we can mess up. You make one bad call, just follow it up, man. Keep calling. Elk don't sound perfect every time, So follow it up. Quit worrying about the mule going blind. Let's load the wagon.
Yeah, there's just some people that should never chuckle. That's all I'm saying. Man, there's some people that should never.
It's one of the hardest things to do, for sure.
And it's, anyway, I want to go back to Luis, man, because for you, man, because you're so anal about stuff, I'm really, really curious on how you started to pick up on those nuances and put some kind of definition of where and when to call.
This was 5 years in the making.
Sure.
And so, we say 5 years, but then that's actually 5 hunts. And those 5 hunts were about, 7 to 10 days each, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, I don't think when you listen to when I sound as an elk and the type of variations and the type of bugle,
Mhm.
you hear Joe's signature into
I
that
think all of us.
because
For all
because
of us.
I think that's, you know, the repetition, the listening to it day in and day out, it just gets you to. And it's funny because at
Style.
the beginning, when I first put a diaphragm in my mouth and I really, you know, tried a sound, the guys would make fun of me. They said I sounded like a cat. In my mind, I'm like, there's no way, man. I'm saying it just right. I mean, they're just messing with me, right? Because your ear is not totally trained to actually listen to your sound. You think you're making the same sound, and they're just laughing. It's like, no, there's no way. It's like, and to me, it was like learning English. You know, like, you know, I would say ketchup, and they were like, what? Ketchup. And they were like, oh, you mean ketchup? And I'm like, well, that's what I said, you know? And it's like, what are you talking about? Y'all pulled my leg. And so very, very similar. That's
kind of like y'all not hearing me when I came in.
Yeah. Exactly. But my point is, like, it's literally like learning a language, because it's not only on the difference in intonation and pitches, but it's also as when to say it, because it's not the same for me to sit here and say, hey guys, where are you? What are you doing? How is it going? And we're like, what? Why can't you just say, hey guys, how are you doing? You know, how is it going? You know, and so,
or just, hey.
If I say it the first time, like super fast, it's kind of out of context. It's like, are you in a rush or something? But if I say it the second way, then it's like, yeah, it's normal, you know. Oh yeah, okay, well, and I respond to that. So it's just like learning a language. You just got to be patient, and you got to listen a lot. The way I learned English was, you know, let me back up a little bit. The way I was initially taught English was going to school in high school, and then they immediately teach you about grammar. Then they want you to write it, and then they want you to speak it, and then you're like, you're trying to read it as if it was Spanish letters with the same phonetic sounds.
Yes.
And then the last thing you do is hear it when the teacher talks back to you, and you don't understand what you're doing or what you're saying. Then when I came to the U.S. as an exchange student, I lived with an American family.
Totally immersed.
Yeah. I learned it the way we learn our mother tongue, which is you first listen. Yeah. You then talk, and then you read, and then you write. Right. So you go in the reverse order in which they're trying to teach you a language. The same thing is with elk. You listen first, and then you try to mimic the sounds, and then you try to understand what you're saying. You kind of go in that order, in my opinion.
So that's the voice and the sound. When I talk about the pace, I'll convert it back to that American house that you came into. When you came to the house, how did you know where to say something to call for somebody, and where were those places, and why did you call for them in those particular places that way? So in other words, you had to come through the front door, right?
Yeah.
So when you came through the front door, it's like, right? If you didn't get a response, where did you go from there to say something to see if somebody was in the house?
Yeah, you continue to walk into go to the living room.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then you called out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm trying to take that, is like when you were with me, how
Oh, I hear you.
You pick up on where to call, right?
Yeah.
Where and when to call, right?
He'd watch your cadence. He'd watch
your pace.
Your pace.
Yeah, and then you start associating the areas as to what's elky areas. You know, you start associating. I was like, well, this is like completely open field. We have huge visibility here, but and maybe before I come out on the clear, I make a few, location bugles just to kind of see if there's anything nearby before we expose ourselves. And then you kind of start picking up of, ooh, wait a minute, it smells a lot like elk in here. There's a lot of sign in here. Maybe, we need to slow down, listen for a little bit, and then make the calls to see if there's something still around here, right? So it's like, it's just how do you associate the environment to what you're going to say in that environment?
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So, for example, if I'm cow calling, if I'm only going to cow call, right? If I'm only going to cow call, and people trying to figure out, well, when do I cow call? Well, think about a herd when it's moving, right? And what I try to do as well is you want to call where you're getting value. If I'm giving a call and getting no response, well, I'm going to go to the next place. It's almost like, I think about it like casting a line in a river, right?
Yeah,
So if I've casted this one area and I've hit the close eddy, I hit the one that's medium, and then I went to that far pool over there, well, then I'm going to move through, and the terrain, the amount of vegetation is all going to and like you said, though, Luis, the sign, man. If I'm smelling something, boom, I mean, I immediately, everything comes down. You become ultra alert. You're throwing calls now behind you. You're not throwing calls in front of you. Do you follow me? Because
and then you immediately think, where's the wind? Where's it going?
Boom.
Where's cover? I mean, just start going through the motions as if an elk pops out. Then what you do at that moment, because you're not ready at the moment that you get that scent of elk like close by. You're like, oh crap! You turn around, you look at, I look at Manano, my eyes get this big, and he goes, and then his eyes get big too, and then you start like, okay, wait a minute, look around. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna say? And are we ready, or do we need to get in a set? What do we do at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, when we were in Colorado, Joe, the first morning, RC and I pull up at the first place. We shut the bike off. He's getting his gear on. I'm getting mine on. He goes, "Oh, nature calls. I'll be right back." Right. And he walks behind me, 40. Yeah, it happens. It's a good day when that happens. Yeah. He walks back there 40 or 50 yards, and I'm putting my pack on, and I hear, I'm like, what in the world was that? I'm like, duh, bro, it's a elk, he's right in front of you. And I hear clomp, 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 clomp. I'm like, oh my God, Knox is back there taking a dump. And I got a whole herd of elk in front of me, literally right in front of me. And I hear the bull going, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not even ready. I don't have an arrow knocked. I don't have nothing. So I know I got to be quiet. I don't want to alert them to our presence. However, maybe they were alerted by us pulling up in there and, getting things ready and whatnot. And I mean, that's how fast it happens, when you're in an area and you smell them, you hear them, and you're like, oh my gosh, here we go. And you're not ready. So you got to get ready, and make things happen from there. Luckily, I mean, we were on them from Jump Street,
So that brings up a great point, though, and I'm going to ask the whole crowd here to think about this and then throw this answer out. Because does your pace of space, of movement between calls, okay, so ground covered, and then your pace of how often you call, does that change from pre-daylight, dark to, let's say, midday?
100%. Yes.
Why is that? Explain that to somebody.
Animal activity.
Yeah. Animal activity, right? I mean, in the dark, you don't want to call them to you. You can't do anything, right? You sure don't want to alert them to your presence. You might want to get a response and know they're in that area. Wait till that gray light and then make your move, right? But you sure don't want to call them in the dark straight to you. So you're slow that pace down, and then once that gray light starts happening, you're cutting the distance, moving in on them.
So what if you don't get a response, bro? So what happens then with that speed and the calling?
Yeah, so you'll increase that. You'll increase
the speed, decrease the calling.
Yeah, you'll increase the speed, you'll increase your calling.
Decrease the calling. Yeah.
You might get a little louder, project that call a little further, right? Because we're going to start. Why is that? Because you're covering ground now. You're not getting that response. You're not seeing the elk yet, right? So we're actually getting more effective, more assertive with the calling. We haven't gotten that response until we get one, and then we got to make decisions after we get one.
So why is that different in the morning, dark, early morning than, let's say, midday?
We
Why is
can't
that
shoot him at
different?
dark.
Well, no, well, what he's talking. I think so. So we know that the elk is probably more active during the early hours in the morning
So
than they are during the middle of the day.
active in what way? With their feet, with their
Yeah, they're
Communicating,
moving. Yeah.
communicating
And communicating.
between
Ah.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're
Yeah,
more
because they're
apt,
letting everybody know where they're going, you know.
they're
Yeah.
more apt to respond,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Early morning than they are at midday. Is that the case? Or, well, okay, so we all know that generally those elk are talking more in the morning, they're talking
Yeah.
more at night, right? And then in the early morning, you know, at daylight, they're talking a lot right then. And then there's going to be a point where it seems like
Yeah, shut
Yeah,
up. Yeah.
everything goes silent. Yeah.
everything goes silent.
But you
Right.
can elicit a response if you know they're there, Joe. You
Yes.
can. And there's a hot button, and sometimes it takes a minute or two to figure out what that hot button was. For me, it was that hoot call, that actual bull grunt, and that made those bulls that came in there 9, 10 o'clock and make them sound off as soon as you hit them with that, right? So they will be vocal, especially if they got cows blowing up around them, right? In that midday deal, right? They
I
will
think a
be vocal.
lot of times, bro, they're being vocal. I think so. I think the other thing is early morning sound carries so friggin'
So
far,
far, yeah.
right? And then as soon as everything starts waking up, the woods start to wake up. You get the breeze, the tree. They hit the trees. Now that you got the diffusion to their sound, right? You got all of these things that are making it difficult for us to pick up from those same distances, right? So I think that's. I want people that are listening to this to start understanding, and we've got to be able to elicit that and put it out so that they can understand that pace is not always the same. There's reasons when you speed up and
You slow down.
slow down, right? Well,
And
we do
sometimes you
this,
speed up to slow down.
yeah, and we do this, but we take it for granted after a while. It becomes an ingrained thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know, man, it's as soon as I can be on top of a ridge, I can be getting pounded with the sun, and as soon as I drop off on the side and I get into one of those what I call ridge crotches, you know, where it gets a little bit darker in there, it gets a little more shaded, it gets a little more cooler, and you're going down into that, it gets a little bit more cover. Man, as soon as you hit that, it's like, whoa, right?
Yep.
You know, and looking for the track and different things. Like, Armando, do you get what I'm talking about with that? Is any of that making sense to you, bro?
A billion percent. Yeah. I think something worth mentioning now is that even though we're talking about it and we've had a lot of experience with it, you know, I'll speak for myself. There's still certain days when we're doing these things correctly. Like when we're not seeing anything, we're not hearing anything, there's no track on the ground, we are moving faster and we're talking about this, you know, pace. Even though we're following our rules that we're listening to right now, we're still not going to hear anything. Sometimes the animals aren't there. So you have to give yourself some grace too. So new listeners, new elk hunters, like there's some days when these elk are just not going to respond. We can go into these dark timber patches, into this crotch. Sometimes we're just not going to hear them, you know? So I think
not going to respond vocally. They can potentially,
they can come
respond
in
by
still.
coming in silent, but
Yes.
And they often do.
Yeah. So just give yourself some grace. Like, you know, just because you're hearing this and you're saying, dude, I'm nailing everything textbook that these guys are talking about, and I'm still not. Like, give yourself some grace, because this year alone, I did have a couple of bulls come in silent, and it wasn't until about almost 30 minutes later that they snuck in, and they were right. There was 4 of us on a ridge, and we were all calling, and he snuck in and out of all 4 of us. I got up because I said, okay, we're at 30 minutes. We're going to get up and we're going to leave this spot. And as I got up, the guy's like, did you hear him run away? And I'm like, what are you talking about? So, you know, yeah, a silent animal, like if you feel you're in the spot, give it some time. Like your one purpose is to get into an area where you think the elk are. If you feel that it's worth spending 30 minutes in, then give the area the due diligence of being patient. Like
Huge word.
you're in a
Yeah.
position now that you worked for to get into. If you're gonna spend 30 minutes there, you're kind of saying, I'm not in a rush to get anywhere.
Yep.
So if you're gonna give yourself 30 minutes, make sure your setup is good. Make sure you can swing to your left
Right.
because you can't swing to your right.
Make sure you can move. Yep.
Make sure you can move. Make sure when you draw back, you got
Yep.
nothing behind you. Like all those little things that you can control, do those and continue to call because you're
And
right.
be patient. Yeah.
Coming in quiet, but when you're in the spot and you're like, they should be here. A lot of the times, new hunters will come in and say, how did you know to look there? How did you know to call here? It's the same stuff that you guys talk about every single day on every episode. So give it some time, let it work. And silent bulls come in more than all of us know. We don't see them all.
Mondo, I had a bull coming in on the set, man. The guy, it's in front of the hunter. I hear a little behind me, and I turn around and I call two bulls in silent behind me within 12 yards. I videotape them because I know my hunter's not going to believe me when I say there's two bulls standing right behind me, man.
Yes.
And these downwind of me, brother. They come in on my downwind side. I spin and look, and this 5x5 little 5x5 is looking at me like this, and then another bull comes in from the other side, and I'm like, never said a word, you know. But they came in silent after do what, Bubba?
That happens all the time.
Does, man. And this bigger bull's out in front of the hunter. He just needs to move. You know what I mean? So again, slow down, find your path. If the bull doesn't do what you want him to do, move your position. You know, you can move. These elk move. You know, when they're moving, you can move.
You know, we joke about it all the time because we talk about when nature calls and somebody has to go to the bathroom out there, that good things happen, right?
Yeah.
And we joke about that, but what is the reason behind that, man? Is you've been moving, you've been calling, and now you've got to stop. And so you have to sit there and wait for your buddy that's off in the bush someplace.
Yeah.
They're in a natural blind because they're going someplace where they can't be seen.
Yes.
And you're sitting there waiting, and next thing you know, you hear a snap in a different direction. There's elk coming in because they got it. They got the opportunity to catch up, right?
Yes.
Or you're on a steep hill and Luis is teaching you things on how to do that on a steep hill. You know,
so Chico, let me
all about
ask
the technique.
we have to share that video, man.
Yeah.
Chico, let me ask you then, because you're pretty, you know, when you're being slow and savvy, why and when do you end up blowing through country on a hunt? What would cause you to blow through?
Well, I think, you know, I think everybody, you know, has been really spot on. Mondo, you're super spot on when you're talking about you have to act as if there are elk there, even if you don't see them, or because if you're not conducting yourself in a way that and you believe that there's elk there that are ready to be hunted or called or stalked, then you're just kind of going through the motions.
You shouldn't have called in the first place.
You're not believing your own sales pitch, right?
You're not committed. You're not committed to it. And
that's right.
And so, you know, I think that's super spot on advice. You know, one of the things that I picked up, one of the times where, you know, Mondo called me during his hunt, was, I think he said he hit like three cow calls, and that was it. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. Less is more. And a bull came in, I don't know how many hours later, but it was just those little calls. But he believed he was acting as if there were elk within that calling area.
Yeah.
And so if you don't act as if there's elk within that calling area, then you're just kind of doing it just, you know, for no reason. But the other thing that Mondo said that was spot on is you got to be prepared to move when it's time to move. And that means, you know, if that means getting, you know, sprinting up hills in the off season, if it means, you know, what I picked up on this off season is I'm doing 5Ks and 10Ks with my pack. And I got 40 pounds in my pack and I'm doing 5Ks and 10Ks and, you know, figuring out what my body can do. But there are times when you're, you know, because if you're hunting out here in the West, it's big country. Even if you're in the thick stuff, Unit 53, holy cow, that thing is straight up and straight down. wind, deadfalls.
blow downs and all
It's,
kinds
it's
of crazy.
rough. But you still got to be able to cover country when the time comes. So, once you decide, okay, there's and don't go by sign necessarily. Sometimes this happened during this archery hunt when we stop and talk, and I talk to the hunter, and I'm like, well, what do you think? Well, there's no sign. And then 2 minutes later, there's like a bugle 50 yards away. I'm like, these elk move so much.
Absolutely. So think about what sign is. Everybody that's listening right now, everybody listen real close. Sign is telling you where elk
have been. Yes.
It doesn't tell you where they are. And it's different. You've got a different animal in September than you do during that summer or during that winter when they are kind of staying in a pattern. Now they're moving all over the place. So it's real easy to be someplace where you're not seeing fresh droppings and you're not seeing fresh track because they haven't happened yet. They're coming to you sometimes, or they're just getting ready to create those tracks. It kind of sucks to be in an area, you go through it, and then when you come back through it, you find fresh track and you find fresh poop because you walked right by them, man.
Never more evident, Joe, than when we hunted in the snow in 2019.
Absolutely.
Craziness. We've been up there for 2 days. It started off pretty cool. Me and Joe were in some elk, and then it was like they vanished like a fart in the wind. It's like, where did they go? They were with us the whole time, but they just weren't. They were silent. And how we know that? We woke up the morning with 4 inches of snow on the ground and elk tracks through the camp. It's like, what is going on here? Fresh droppings, fresh urine, fresh elk tracks. First time I ever got to get on a track and run an elk down. I mean, me running elk down, really? I mean, at the end of the day, it's doable.
Let's rename that. Let's rename that running it down thing.
Okay, walking him down. Briskly walking him down.
I got to bring something up. I think that we've all kind of been agreeing with our comments as far as pace and all that stuff. But I noticed there is a disagreement here, and I want to hash that out. I noticed when Chico was talking about, the pace and all that stuff, Gilbert was nodding up and down yes all the time. Every time Chico was talking, I was like, man, yeah, everybody's aligned with it. But then when he said 5Ks and 10Ks, Gilbert immediately started nodding his head left and right. So I need to understand that a little better. I was like,
I ain't going 5K, dude.
Yeah.
So
I'm doing like Armando. I'm calling them 2.5K. I'm calling them 2.5K, man.
So I want to make that a legitimate point, though, that you're making, though, Luis. It's actually very legitimate because Mr. Gilbertson was a prime example. This guy went 50 miles, and I mean, he would go all the way through and up in one area and come down and say, well, I didn't see any sign. So he's out of there, right? He covered so many places so fast that he was blowing by elk that were in that country.
Sure,
and that was one thing that I told him about that, right? And he actually changed that a little bit on the last day that he killed something, right?
He slowed down.
So yeah, he just slowed down, and then he actually blew the situation up a little bit, kind of went over, boogered him, and then he ends up texting me and saying, I just jumped this bull, man, and I don't think it didn't smell me. I know it didn't smell me and stuff. He said, should I get on the track? And I'm like,
heck yeah.
You got something else to do? Absolutely, man. So I'm like, but give it 30 minutes, because that bull, all he did, he was in his bed. He's already up at the top. He's not going anyplace else. He's just going to move off. He's going to watch his back trail. He's going to listen for noise. As soon as he doesn't see any danger, he's going to relax doing to what he does. He bedded down like just right, I don't know, 100 yards of where he was, man, and ends up, coming through, getting the shot and shooting him at 80 yards, right? So, but he had been for days covering miles
blowing through country,
through. And I heard from so many people, like, okay, Gil, when I called that bull in for you in that one area, we were seeing me and Luis and Manano, me and you, we were seeing bull after bull after bull.
Yep.
How many droppings did we see?
None.
None.
Yeah.
Not one, man.
It was like, and I think part of that,
they don't doo-doo in that area.
the difference was, I think, is like when you had elk track in the snow, you see the track, you're on the track, so you see the droppings, you see the pee, right?
Yeah.
When you're in that hard rock and dirt and everything like that, you don't see all this track. So a lot of times you miss in that stuff. You miss the droppings, you miss the urine, right?
Overlook it.
Yeah. But man, we were in elk like crazy there, right?
Oh my gosh.
And I think a lot of people go in those areas and they're like, okay, I don't see any sign. I don't see any of this. Now, one thing I'll do is they're in the transition area. Go to maybe where they water.
Yeah.
See what you see there, to see if you have any use in those areas. But even with that, they could be coming from 2 miles before they ever hit that water. And then they go to the next source and they move on like that. So that happens.
Well, and I thought what Armando said was so key is knowing your pace, knowing what your body can do, and keeping some of that in reserve. Luis and I have talked about that. I got to hunt with my brother in Colorado quite a bit, and it was very cool. He's a cool motivator because, man, I'm telling you, this guy can climb mountains like the best of them. I don't like climbing mountains, but I will if I hear an elk up there, right? And he was like, dude, you go slow, but you go, and you steady and you're going to get there. And then you possess the skill set to call them, So for me, it's about managing my pace, managing my energy conservation, my lung capacity, and then keeping some of that in reserve for when you do get that response and you need to march up that really steep 200, 300 foot climb, 500 foot climb, whatever it may be.
You're managing your energy.
And I am managing my energy.
And trying to keep yourself from sweating, all of that, man.
Yeah. And we did it with RC. We finally, after in Colorado, we finally got a response from a bull on this ridge. We knew he was there, and he finally gives it to us. And I look at RC, and he's a long way off. And I'm like, look, bro, we got nothing to lose. What else are we going to do? Let's go. Dude, and RC can put a pace down, dude. That guy is an amazing athlete. At 70 years old, man, the dude is freaking relentless, man. The legend he's legendary, right? So he takes off. I'm right on his heels, and we got to the very last point before we got in the timber. I went, stop, RC. I said, I'll give you all I got. That was it, dude. Like, I am not going to have any more to get to the top, man. I got to have a second, And he just starts laughing. He goes, I'm glad you said something because I'm about to die. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm going to pass clean out, I could see the little stars and everything, But we got in there, we got in. And it's like Chico said, man, if I could do 5Ks and 10Ks, I probably would be able to do that. I have some lung capabilities, some issues that I damaged my lungs when I was younger. And so it's harder for me, but I got to manage my pace. And I think every guy that's on the mountain needs to manage that. It's getting better as, I've, managed my weight and gotten better with that. But still, the way I assimilate oxygen's different. It's just I have some damage to my lungs that was done when I was a young man. So at the end of the day, man, we've managed our strength, though. And my body never let me down this year. I was really proud of the strength level that I possessed, the energy level that I possessed. And I think everybody that's on the mountain needs to be real with themselves and not get themselves in a predicament that would get them in trouble health-wise or, injury. Because, we've seen that claimed in our other our first, second year hunts. We had guys get injured, because some of the riggers are just hunting every day, rear up and they try to go hard, and it's just different.
So I'm gonna this is the perfect spot for one of these questions because it's right in the pace of calling. It's from Bronson Worley out of Colorado, and shout out to you, Bronson, man. Bronson's been really working on his calling too. He's been sending me stuff. He says, I understand to give a bull what he wants. basically if a bull's responding to cow calls or if he's responding to bull, bugles, and that if a bull and I are talking back and forth and he goes quiet, he's probably still coming in. Absolutely. And I think that's, again, one of those patience things where a lot of us, for our own security, we end up throwing calls out when we don't need to. So I'll just put that out. He said, but what if I'm solo and he stays responding to my bugles? Do I continue to bugle while he's coming in? And then he says, if so, do I throw those behind me?
100.
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Yeah. 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 And when I get eyes on him, I'm probably being quiet, right? I'm probably letting him find me now, right? Because the more you sound off, that he sound closer to him, he's expecting to see another elk, right? And when he doesn't, he's going to lock up, right? And he's going to try and find it, and he's going to slow things down. Once he gets in that bubble and you see him coming, probably best to be quiet and let him come right on by.
Let him come. Shut up.
Yeah, shut up.
That's what I was going to say. Is it depends on how far away he is when he's responding to your bugle.
Yeah,
right?
hide and seek. Remember, we're playing hide so they can seek us. And look, I'm victim to that this year. Right, I actually had a bull on a string coming, and I had a decoy with me, and I thought sounding more like a cow moving away was a better job than shutting up and letting him come find me. And that caused him to stop 45, 50 yards instead of just come on through the area looking for the elk, right? But we fall in love with calling too, guys.
That's what Chico said, less is more sometimes, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I think the answer, like my personal answer to that question would be no and yes. Like, I'm not going to call because I'm not going to come up with the, I'm not going to believe he's coming to me and answering after just one bugle back and forth to each other. So, you're already going to have a dialogue with him with 2 or 3 bugles to know, okay, shit, that's 3 bugles. He is answering. He's coming. That's when I'm going to stop. So if he continues to bugle on the way in, I say nothing. If I feel I'm have to bugle, it will for sure be behind me. But that's after my setup is perfect, or I bugle and I've already identified something 20 yards away further towards him that I'm going to get to after I bugle. Sound is not a bad thing, people. Like, keep that in mind. Like, they're expecting sound as far as movement. They're expecting a horn to hit a branch. They're expecting some sort of animal sound, not necessarily a vocalization.
So, Mondo, when he locks up and you see him, okay, it say he's 80, 90 yards away in the trees, right? And he locks up, he's looking, right? And you've already shut your mouth, and he stops and he's in that scan mode, right? Are you going to bugle behind you if he looks like he's going to turn around and walk out? Are you going to try to get his attention again if he's looking like he's moving away?
I'll really wait. This is perfect scenario, people. I get what you're saying. He's 80 yards. I don't have a shot. I'm watching him. He kind of shuts up, and you could see in their body behavior, this guy's about to walk out. I'm not going to do it while he's effectively looking directly in my area. The minute he turns to walk away, I can hit that little
throw it behind you.
And throw it behind you.
The ears will tell you a lot too.
There you go. Where is he thinking he's picking this up? But if, say, his body turns to go away, I'll go behind me or use my, soloist, go behind here. And then he's going to be like, hold on. Like, you should not be there. I just looked. What is going on there? So that gives you a second chance. But if we're within line of sight, I personally would probably not bugle unless I had a hunter in front of me. So if I'm solo hunting, I'll just wait and try to set up on him again in another 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a lot like Mondo in that when that bull's coming, even if he starts to turn to the side and walk, because I've seen them so many times when they do that, when they'll just start to take a direction, they'll even eat a little bit, and then they'll come up and look your way, and then they start coming back. They just take a different route that they do that. Now, if I see the bull, so I had one time where I had bulls bugling on, off to my left. The bull heard that and he was actually getting ready to go join that. So I take my tube and it's behind my back and I throw my call back behind me, just one little, and it's just got to be light. It doesn't have to be loud, man. Just, and just let that. Next thing you know, he's up, he's looking, and here he comes, man. And he walks right back into my life. I unless I know that bull is getting ready to walk out of my life, I don't do anything to change the situation if I'm within visual, right?
And
I mean, we had that bull coming in, Joe, and I look over at my hunter, and he's not drawn. He's just looking at the bull. I'm like, oh, bro, please draw. I've stopped him twice. I don't know what of course, I have a different angle, right? So now the bull's actually turned, going to walk away. And so I start calling with that decoy and going away from us. And he just did not like that at all, right? It actually made him more nervous. So he barked at us, and like, show yourself, I hear you, but now show yourself, whereas we should have killed him at 40 yards. When he turned, like Joe said, when he turned to walk through us, all we needed to do is step out 5 foot and put it on him, so that's a big learning moment for me.
Absolutely.
Was as a coach and a caller, learning when to shut up and just ease out of there and let the bull come through,
Chico, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't be too concerned if they walk away. Well, walking away doesn't necessarily mean they're walking out on you.
That's right.
Sometimes that's an opportunity to move up. If they walk away and you move up 15 or 20 yards and you hit another call.
Yes.
Sometimes they're just, in fact, I'll tell you a quick story. 1985, turkey hunting with Joe Gillia. we got Toms coming in, and they just held up, right? And I was getting ready to call again, and he looks at me, pissed off, and is like, "Stop calling." And the Toms walk away. We move up about 20 yards into their little strutting area, hit the call. Man, those turkeys just on a string.
Jammed right back.
Yeah, we shot 2 Toms within 10 seconds of each other.
I was not to make y'all feel bad, but I was 6 years old.
So was Chico.
In that same scenario, Chico, if my hunter saw that bull turn and walk away, right? Our coach, our guide that was with us, our student, he sees the bull turn and walk away, and the bull's got his head turned walking away. The guy can move 30 yards on him, right? He can cut that distance 30 yards as the bull's walking away. And he just, again, us whitetail hunters coming from Texas, it's so ingrained in us not to move, right? And to be still. And for me, it's like, bro, when did you want to kill him? When he stopped 40 yards from you, he's like, well, I just didn't think I could thread it through there. And then I'm like, well, when he turned to walk away, you could have moved up on him, So really great teaching moments, learning moments for me as a coach as well. And then being recording it, I can hear myself, hear what I did wrong, can really critique myself and take direction from Joe too. As coaches, we got to get better as well and be able to know what we did good and what we did bad in the moment, right? Or I won't say bad, but what we can improve on.
And I think that's an important point that Chico brought up that most people don't understand when we talk about those strutting toms and we talk about elk. When they've come to a certain place that they've already stopped and scanned, they've come to that safe, and then they go back, they will absolutely come back to that spot again because they've already been there. So especially if they go over a hill, they do anything like that, drop off a little bit, you can get to where you're in that effective shooting range of that and then throw that call, they will come right back up to that same spot, man. So,
how many times have we called bulls right back that leave and we call them right back, Joe?
The same spot they were already standing.
To the same spot they were at already. I mean, you called that bull back twice for Brendan. I called one back 5 or 6 times. I mean, and I'm like, bro, you're not going to get any better than that, man. We're going to have to draw our bow and make it rain,
I've called them back after shooting at them and missing them.
Luis, for sure.
A lot of elk hunting, don't forget, a lot of elk hunting is just waiting for them to make a mistake.
That's right.
And so if you keep yourself in the game and keep yourself, you're increasing your chances of that happening. Like you said, Gilbert, don't be afraid to move. Movement is fine. Noise is fine.
They expect to hear it. They hear elk.
The wind is good, and don't be afraid to close the distance. And then one last thing is draw your
bow, baby. Because you're going to find a hole if you draw that bow. If you draw the bow, you're going to find a spot.
Here's the good news for everybody is that there are more elk now than probably ever before, more hunting opportunities than ever before, better equipment than ever before. A lot of the ways, a lot of the things that I do when I'm hunting harken back to a time when there weren't a lot of elk.
Yeah.
And then we hunted deer, and we were lucky if we saw a track, every 5 miles. Yeah. So we had to cover ground. We pack out our own animals from.
Was this before 1986, Chico? I'm just trying to get my timeline right.
All right, just to let you know, I was dirty. 1968. I my first hunt,
brother.
75.
Yeah.
All right, and there was no compound bow. I got my first compound bow from Joe Giglia, a used PSE.
And by the way, you still owe me for that, bro.
You ain't getting paid, Jack.
I mean,
you left it on the field, man.
You hunt with longbows, 30-30 open sight. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
And things are, gosh.
But Chico, you keep well, man. You look at least 20 years younger than Joe.
He's not. He's not. We practice this thing just so that we can do this father-son type thing.
I got you.
Chico's a year older than me, Joe. I mean, he's just a year. We were a year apart, man. My brother's amazing looking at his age, man.
So just for the hunters out there and for us, we have the luxury of talking about these things in a time and an environment where it's just beautiful.
Rich. Yeah, it's a rich environment.
But there's less opportunity, it seems like, than what there used to be when, back in 1986. I mean, remember, we were buying turkey, elk, and deer all on bear on one, for one price, man, Yeah.
That's why this platform, I think, is so important, because the DIY guys, you can do it. You can.
Absolutely.
You can get your tags. You get in shape, you get out there, you scout, you listen to these guys that have been there and done that are willing to share. That's the cool thing about this platform is you got people that are willing to share, 30, 40, 50 years of experience. This is an accelerated class.
Sure.
The things that we're talking about, for me, it took me, well, how many years is that, Luis? Literally, a lot of it was just screwing up, and bumping animals and going too fast and not paying attention. And you talk about my older brother was my mentor. He's the one that taught me how to hunt, and I used to follow him, and he knew it. One time we were out in the Canadian River, and I was following him, and he walked around a tree. And I followed him, walked around the tree again.
I said geometry.
I was like, he's like, pick up your head.
I'm innocent.
I'm innocent. Gilbert knows all about that. Yeah. So, Gilbert is pretty good at math and geometry. And
so Joe, I said, Joe, you're just taking this in circles, bro. He's like, no, man. I said, I know what a circle is, Joe. I passed geometry, dude.
Dude, I took him in a circle for an hour before he realized it, man.
He's right, dude.
Want to share knowledge, because the guys that come out that want to do this, and a lot of these guys, most of them are like super type A guys, and they want to, everything is structured, and they're like, okay, what do I do here? What do I do here? What do I do?
Yeah, and it ain't like that.
It's very
dynamic.
Very fluid,
Very dynamic, yep.
It's dynamic, man. So what I'm going to do is to get us Well, but I'm going to move us on to this one because
Right, but I wanted to say one thing about Bronson. He was right when he started doing the bugle back. When the bull answered him, he bugled back, right? Our hunter this year, the first response he got, I heard this bull bugle. I said, "Well, bugle back at him." So he cranks a bugle out and the bull answers him. I'm like, "Well, bugle back at him, cut him off." He bugles back at him and then the bull shut up. I said, "You better get ready. That bull's coming." He goes, "Yeah, but he ain't said anything." I said, "Bugle again." He bugles and then the bull sounds off. He's 150 yards from us from a half mile away, right? That's how fast that bull covered country. And then before you know it, the bull's on top of us, you know? So yes, Bronson, hammer down on him. You get that response, keep getting after it, man, you know, and then once you get him in that bubble, shut up and let him come to you, dude. That's a great question. I mean, look at what it segued into, Joe.
there you go. Next question was from Brian McDade, and this goes perfect into our pace and reacting to verbal response, fresh track smell, or on a stalk. He says, I usually run into where an elk has bedded. I can see the pee in the beds. Assuming the wind is right and they did not get spooked out of the bed, how should I proceed? Should I cow calf calls or like regathering sounds and sit tight for a while?
Well, regathering sound could be alarming to them, you know, because the herd usually splits when that happens. I just softly cow call, Joe, you know, if you know they're around you.
I think I want to know where the bed is located and what time of day it is, first of all, for me.
In the
So,
wind direction.
yeah, if this is up in the bedding area, you're actually in a bedding area, and let's say that it's early afternoon when you hit that, right? It's probably not very far because that animal just probably got up and moving down, so it's probably not very far, right?
Could have went to water,
Yeah,
follow.
yeah. And now if it's early morning, you know, and you hit that, and it's probably from the day before or something like that. You know, it just kind of depends on where, if you hit that bed down in the bottom, that's not, if it's like a nighttime bed someplace down there, and you hit that and the, you know, it's 8 o'clock, 8:30, well, that critter's not going to be around there. They're already moved off to their daytime bed, right?
That's right. That's
So
right.
you just kind of think about that. But like if I'm going through and I'm on a track and I hit a bed and it's 10:30, you know, 11 o'clock in that area, and it looks like that's fresh track and fresh urine there, you know, I'm like,
Mm.
you better
Slow it down.
really take that
Look.
pace down, man. Look where that track is.
Lots of
You can
looking.
generally tell if that's a cow or a bull by where that urine spot is, just because the anatomy on an animal. If it's out on the outside edge of the bed like that, most likely a cow. If it's in the middle of that bed, most likely a bull, because they'll just stand up and when they urinate there. So you can kind of tell what kind of animal that you're dealing with. But you know, a cow sound, you know,
Always
cow
good.
calf is not bad at all. Now, if I blew up a herd, you know, then I might use
Then regather. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But at that point in time, a cow calf, if I'm in one where I think it's right there, or I'm not going to say a word and I'm going to get on that track and try to see if I can
Dog it.
get in on that
Yeah.
animal, right?
Dog it. Yeah.
But if I was going to do calls, I would absolutely start doing just a little slow call, you know, a little slow play with those animals and see if I can, and really make sure I'm checking where my setup is, what my intention is, and then trying to bring that animal into me. So let's talk about that though. I want to talk about pace and reacting to a verbal response. Okay. So you were talking about this earlier, Armando. You were talking about there's a time when there's a go time. All right. You have a verbal response. When's the go time?
It's a response. He's responding to one of my calls.
Yes.
Pretty much like kind of the first one, right? Like I'm just going to put myself in the scenario. I'm out there, I'm calling, I hadn't heard nothing. I continue working. You know, I work in, I'm a few hundred yards away. I call, I hear something. I'm not going to directly go to it. I'm going to sit there and listen for a minute to see if I hear anything else. And then I'll try to elicit at least one more before I make a move because I want to pinpoint where it's at. after the fire service, my ears are pretty shitty.
Me
And
too.
so like I need to know where, okay, give me one more response. And then if he responds to me a second time, then I can kind of pick up on the timing. Does he light right after I cow call? Or if it was a bugle he responded to, if I bugle and he hits me right away, like you can kind of judge what I'm going to need to do after he responds to me. So if I bugle and he bugles, then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to give it a minute. Then I'm going to bugle again. And then he waits 2 or 3 seconds before he bugles. It's not an aggressive, hey, like, you know, I'm not going to really hit him. I'm going to work towards him. If he, you know, and I'm going to work a little bit, probably slower in my pace. If I bugle and he rips at me right away, I'm going directly to him. He's probably going to come to me, and then I'll slow down once I cut half of that distance. That's kind of how I would play that scenario.
So he responded, bro, and the wind was wrong.
You stop. You have to stop. Like it doesn't make sense to hearing bugles. You can't eat bugles, you know, like you can't shoot at bugles. So you just stop immediately
till the wind's right.
Figure out your best plan of attack. If you got to back out, so be it. You're not blowing that elk out. You know he's going to be there. So immediately stop. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to
go around.
Go around. Yes. Figure what what's he doing? You can sit, you just have to leave really. If the wind is bad, you just stop. You make a new game plan.
Time of day and terrain's important too. If it's like middle of the day, chances are
it could be bedded.
Bedded and just bugling, and then
you can tell that lazy bugle though. Yep.
If he's halfway up, let's say he's halfway up the top.
Yeah.
It's middle of the day. Yeah. Thermals are going to change. You get out and get around him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get out and around him.
1,000,000,000%. Like every scenario that we're talking about, like I just really want to reiterate that it's important for the listener to know they're all different and they can all change.
Yeah.
The wind needs to dictate.
The time of the day, the time of the year. September 1st is different than September 15th.
Heck yeah.
6 a.m. is different than 11 a.m. And you can have the exact same sounds coming back to you that we approach totally different. So Chico's 1,000,000,000% right. If that bull bugles lightly at a response halfway up the hill and it's 11 o'clock and the wind is wrong, dude, I got probably 2 hours to get my wind right, to work around and go slow, because he is not going to move but maybe 100 yards when the sun moves. And he's going to, maybe pick a new bed, sit back down, and then it's go time. Once you got your wind right, you already know he's going to answer to your bugle. If you get closer, you don't necessarily have to rip a bugle at him, but make that vocalization. Let him know, hey, I heard you earlier. I'm coming, And
it doesn't even have to be a bugle. It could be a rake.
No,
do a little something. Yeah.
Yeah. Mondo, we were in Canada and our first morning, we hit a bugle, got a response. And we're wrong. The wind's wrong. Where the bull's at, it's wrong. And I look at RC and I said, dude, we got to go. We can't. This bull's coming. He's coming on a string, right? He's bugled 3 times at us with one location bugle, and he's trying to find us. And the wind is going right to him. I'm like, we got to go. So we dropped off, went around, took us 45 minutes. And then when we blew in there on him, he was already on top of us. He heard us coming through all that thick brush. He was on top of us. The first cow call, shit breaking and limbs cracking, and here we see horns coming through the woods. Again, though, we never see that bull, though, if we carry on from the top and let the wind go to him, right? So the wind and the response you get dictates on what you gotta do and get the wind right.
Yeah, so I think Joe, can I?
Finish.
Just you and Luis came up with a beautiful analogy earlier of the language. Luis, you came into the United States. You're with this other family, and you talk about having to listen to the language and reading the room. If you're in with this new home and this new family, and like you said, you come in the front door and there's nothing going on, you continue to go a little bit further. If there's a dialogue going on in the kitchen, you're going to hear if that dialogue is just a light dialogue. What kind of communication are they having with one another? You'll also understand if the dad comes in and he's having a totally different conversation with his wife or his kids, then you can match that intensity and that energy. So you're going to hear that. Like, you guys have to, just because you hear a bugle, there's different types of bugles. Just because you hear, there's intensities to calls. And so you have to be able to pick up on that and
know how to respond.
And when you respond, just kind of think of it as the language barrier that we're talking about. You might not understand what he's saying, but if these people aren't yelling at each other, you can't walk in there and yell, So I just wanted to say that was a great analogy. And I think it's easy for us, like, we don't all speak multiple languages. Just put yourself like you're going into a new home where they're speaking a different language. You need to speak at the tone and frequency and pace that the local dialect is being conducted in.
Yeah.
Good point. Excellent point, man.
Yes.
So I'm gonna throw one out on pace that might surprise people. Is there a speed up or slow down or different paces on a stalk when you see a bull elk possibly on stalking that animal? I see a lot of heads shaking. I want to hear why.
Yeah, let's hear it, Chico.
Well, I mean, if you're in stalk mode, and if there's a bull and he's back and forth, he's got his cows and he's back and forth, and he's that he's doing his thing with his cows, and you're not talking to him at all. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to get.
Oh, he can sneak in.
Yeah, man. That's why I like to kill him. Don't say a word.
To me, you move as fast as you have to get a shot.
Yeah, man.
And that means,
make it happen.
And that means when he's you got to watch for the cows, because the cows will bust you before the bull does.
Yeah.
Right. But when he's distracted or turned away, you get a tree between you and him, and you move your ass. You create an opportunity. If that doesn't work, and he cuts a bull will move 200-300 yards, and you think, oh shit, he's gone. No, he's after a cow, or he's pulling another cow in, or he's chasing a satellite
off. Yeah.
And then pretty soon he's right back in front of you. So, that's that's kind of been a theme of tonight is don't be afraid to move.
Yep.
But at the same time, be ready to shoot when the time comes, because it's going to be fast and furious. But if you're stalking and you don't have to call, I mean, to me, if you don't have to call, you don't call.
No.
Every call creates an expectation, right? Every time you create an expectation,
they know you're there when they.
So if you don't have to call and you can get in on him, get in on him and let him make a mistake.
Yeah. Chav taught me that early in my hunting career. We actually walked through a herd of cows. How many cows were there, Chav, when we walked through that herd to get to that load of bulls that we heard bugling down the way? We walked through 15,
small
20
herd.
Yeah, small herd, 12, 15 cows. We walk through that herd, cow calling. They kind of booger a little bit, but they like, we don't know how many legs them guys got. They look like two elk moving through there. We get on up there and we get eyes on the bull. Don't say a word. We just ease in there, get in their kitchen. Probably got, well, one time they were 12 feet from us. Right. And they did not know we were there. We snuck in that deep on them, had to call them past a barrier, over a barrier, okay, and then put an arrow in one of them. But only time I had to make any call or any sound is when they got a little whiff from the gods. It made them a little uneasy, and they kind of boogered up a little bit, and then just a few small cow calls to get them back interested. And then we finally got them interested enough where they went across that barrier, and we shoot one at 50 something yards and ended up killing. But we had to come through a herd of elk, a herd of cows to get to those bulls. Right?
And sometimes you don't worry about going through, you don't always worry about those. I've seen people lock up because there's a spike staring at them. Now, if that spike is going to run back into the herd and blow the herd up is one thing, but if that spike's on the side and he's going to go out there, they don't know why that spike's running off. It could be that bull run that spike off, right? So you just got to play the part of that. You can't always worry. There's times when I've gone through and somebody's gone, oh, there's cows over there, freeze. I'm like, forget those cows, man.
Yeah, we're going to them bulls 300 yards from them cows.
Yeah, I'm just going, man. I'm going to go take care of business here. Let them go off and do what they're going to do, right? So, yeah. Any closing, because we're getting ready to close out of this, man. This has been tremendous this evening. So
Can I add one little
Yeah.
tip to this that I do that I think might be beneficial to everybody is don't be afraid to move in on that stock
absolutely.
until you're within shooting range. So on my rangefinder pouch, when I open it, on top of it, it says slow down. On top of my vinyl harness, it says work harder. Like it's just a reminder for me to verbally, if my head goes down, like, you know, kind of like, hey, I have my head down, work harder. Like it's just a reminder for myself. But the minute that your hand goes to that rangefinder pouch, that's when you slow down. You can go fast up until that point. Once you think I'm within shooting position, for me, that's my reminder. That's when I take it down 5 notches. I have to slow down. Once that rangefinder comes out, it's game time. Your mindset has to change. Chico mentioned this. Yeah, you're in finish mode. Like your mindset has to change. And I thought, Chico, like it really changed my attitude when I was in the blind this year. I had a bull come in and it was a very long, drawn out process. But you have to change your mentality and kind of the energy that you put out there to be from a predator. Like you don't want to put this energy that you're nervous, that shit, something's about to happen. I need to slow my breathing. You just have to go to basics. And the more you do this thing, it's easy to talk about it now because I've been in this situation before. But if you go through this mentally, as you watch a YouTube video, as you listen to a podcast, like if I'm in this situation, how do I feel? Okay, what are the things I have to do? I have to pick a spot. I have to see as this animal's coming in, I'm going to slow down. This is where I'm going to draw. Okay, if he comes in from here, this is where I'm going to draw. As soon as he gets to here, I'm at full draw. I anchor. I pick my spot. I already ranged it. And just like Gilbert said, this is where I kill him. And then that's what's going to happen. He's going to come through. You have a calmness about you. Yeah. Whack. Smash. Dude, then you freak out.
Yeah. Then all the marbles come out. Yeah.
But don't scream, I just hit a bull.
No. You don't go Joe Gillian dogpile somebody till he falls over.
Yeah. So, but I just think move fast until you're within shooting range where you believe I could probably shoot something here. The minute your hand goes to that rangefinder, that's my time as a reminder. I just think it's easy for a follower to say, hey, my rangefinder's out. Now I slow down.
That's why I've always blown things up. I've never owned a rangefinder, so I just keep.
Well, Joe, they didn't have them when you started.
Yeah, they didn't have internet either.
I want you to remember, you're a retiree, bro. So.
I know.
This has been a fantastic show.
Can't thank y'all for joining us. Thank you for letting me be tardy tonight, guys. I knew this was going to be a phenomenal fight. Yeah, okay, dude. Whatever. He loves to dog me, man. This dude is texting me the whole way home, man. He's texting me on another podcast missed, man. You're not committed, you know. A chicken takes part in breakfast, a hog's committed, you know. I mean, that's these guys are the best, man. And then when I do come in, they're like, "Oh, we can't hear you, bro. Something's wrong with your audio equipment." Da 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 da. Look, I absolutely thank each and every one of you. Chico, was so cool to share camp with you, and the news that you gave us today made my day, man. It was I couldn't wait to get on and celebrate with you, Mondo. So good having you, man. I see all the content you put out all the time, dude. If you guys don't know about bow hitch, y'all better find out. Go to bowhitch.com, man, and check our boy Mondo out, because carrying your bow sucks, guys. If you're hunting out west, you better have a bow hitch, man. It is an absolute game changer. I've said this a million times. If there's anything innovative out there that has changed our game at how we hunt here at ElkBros and my game in the mountains, the guys that had them this year loved them. The guys that didn't can't wait to get them. So even our boys in Canada now all have bow hitches, man, thanks to Mondo and his crew. So y'all check him out, man. Counselor, always good to have our counselor in the group and our unbelievable coach, Chico Gallegos. It's been an unbelievable podcast. Again, I knew it would be, especially on pace. And Joe puts these things together so good, man. And it's been fantastic having everybody. Luis, always good to have my brother that builds them bad to the bone missiles in on the podcast, dude. We're in the woods.
These guys act like he's young, but he's only, what, 5 years behind me? I mean, it's like...
yeah.
5 decades.
And these guys are in the woods, man. Y'all check out their content on VM Hunters on their YouTube channel, man. We'll start pumping out more content on ElkBros on our YouTube page too, because deer are hitting the ground and hogs and everything else. So it's been a fantastic spot. Chav, always great to hear from the ninja, man. We got more than 2 sentences out of him tonight. We're gonna get Chav's gonna have to do a whole segment. Joe said he's gonna do a whole segment for us, so I can't wait for that to happen, man. You know, if you like what we're doing, guys, please subscribe, rate, and review us. You got to go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes to review us, and be sure to include your name and where you're from to get in on our spin a winner wheel drawing. And you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. Just a reminder, if any of our listeners out there would like their questions answered on the show, you can send your questions to joe@elkbros.com. And fantastic podcast, Joe, as always. Can't wait to do it again. Thanks to all our coaches and guests tonight joining us. And like we say down here in the Lone Star State, boys, husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Hug your babies. Keep your broadheads sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Dude.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for being on board.
And for all our grinders out there, here's some music from our brother, Mr. Tony Wintrip, to close out the show.
Staring out in the wild, all I see is trees. It don't take much of my time when I'm looking for peace. Quiet and a solitude, leave the world behind, it's gone crazy. I've been up and down these highways, man, I've seen them all change. There's headlights in the straightaway where I used to see for days, and 5 a.m. is rush hour, and half the world is sick, and the kids in a new generation, they can't even drive a stick shift. We need to hit the pause button, start thinking about a different way. If we could just get back to the old days. Now they want to clean the air up and run cars on batteries. There's new drugs hitting the streets these days, turning dirtbags into zombies. They're littering up the streets, shooting them needles in their veins, and they get a right to vote without any brains. Look who's running the country, Democrats or Republicans. We can't even work together. I thought that we were all Americans. So let's take out the trash, start thinking about a different way. If we could just get back to the old days. The old days were wild. They said the West was one. You never stole from anybody, or you'd see the south side of a gun. Staring down the hammer, about to close your eyes, when the man that you had stolen from was the devil in disguise. I remember as a kid hearing about that electric chair. It's made for real bad people, there's a reason they're sitting there. If you break the law, son, better reap what you sow, 'cause you knew right from wrong. Now Hey, if we could just get back to the old days. If we could just get back to the old days.